And for more on the crisis in Gaza, I'm joined by Phyllis Bennis. She directs the new Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies, a think tank here in Washington, D.C. She's also a human rights advocate. Welcome back to the show, Phyllis.
Thank you.
I want to turn to the talk of ceasefire. There are some meetings that are set to take place in Cairo, some talking behind the scenes, Israel supposedly bringing a delegation up there. Do you think at the moment we're seeing all this violence and there's this push for heavy strikes because a ceasefire could be imminent?
It's possible that there could be a ceasefire at any time, but I think it would be a mistake to assume that because Israel and Egypt are meeting, or even Israel, the US, and Egypt are meeting, that that's somehow enough. They're all on one side. Egypt right now is closely tied to the interests of Israel, as is the United States. By refusing to involve the Palestinians, either the Palestinian Authority or the Hamas leadership in Gaza or any other Palestinians in those negotiations, it's almost a guarantee that they're not going to work.
But it looks like there has been some Palestinian leadership looking for a ceasefire, and Hamas has been the holdout.
I don't quite agree with that. Hamas has made very clear what their conditions are for a ceasefire that will last. They're not looking for a ceasefire that will last a day, a month, 6 months, and then start the whole cycle again. What they have said is we need to end the siege of Gaza. What that means is opening the borders, allowing people to move, allowing Gazans to breathe. We have 1.8 million people who are still surrounded by a wall, patrolled by Israeli soldiers on all sides and the Egyptians on the one last side, the skies patrolled by the Israeli Air Force, the seas off the coast patrolled by the Israeli Navy, and all the borders are shut. The UN has said that 43% of Gaza is now either destroyed or under orders by the Israelis for people to leave, and they have nowhere to go. People are fleeing the airstrikes and are being killed by airstrikes in the places where they sought refuge with the United Nations, as we just heard Chris Gunnis describing. So, you know, the problem is unless there is a release of that siege, unless there is an opening of the borders, no temporary ceasefire is going to work. And until there is Palestinian engagement with those talking about a ceasefire, I'm afraid that that's not going to be on the agenda.
So it seems that there's this long-term versus short-term. A lot of sides want a halt in the shelling so they can talk more and more about what can get done. And you were just mentioning this long-term solution. Do you see this ending anytime soon? Both sides seem so far apart.
Yeah, I think it could. And again, it comes back to the United States. Hillary Clinton negotiated the ceasefire in November of 2012, the last time we saw this massive Israeli shelling of Gaza. It wasn't as long as this, but it killed about 108 people in Gaza. It was a massive destroy.
But John Kerry isn't there anymore. He stepped out, and a lot of people most people don't really want him around at this point.
But my point was that when Hillary Clinton negotiated it, that ceasefire included a commitment to lift the siege, to open the borders. That never happened. It was supposed to begin implementation within 24 hours after the ceasefire went into effect. It never happened. So the people in Gaza have gone, they respected the ceasefire until this recent period for a year and a half while remaining imprisoned in what amounts to an outdoor prison. So the question of who can negotiate now, it's not enough to say it can be Israel and Egypt negotiating with each other. They're already on the same side. The question is, when is there going to be serious negotiations? If they won't talk directly to Hamas, will they talk to Turkey, the representatives of Turkey and Qatar, who have been negotiating with Hamas? So far, Israel has refused to talk to Turkey and Qatar. Egypt has been quiet about that because Israel is playing the bad cop. But there's got to be some real negotiations here if they're serious about a ceasefire.
Amnesty International is pushing the United Nations for an arms embargo. Is that something that could work? And if so, would the different countries agree to that? Would the international community go for that?
This is a struggle, but I think it's very, very important that Amnesty has raised it. There's a letter circulating with a number of Nobel Peace laureates, Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa and others who have signed on to it, calling for an arms embargo against Israel specifically. The reason is that there is such a glut of weapons in the region overall, but particularly the divergence between Israel, which is the 11th most powerful army in the world, not just in the region, but in the world, against, and the country with the only nuclear weapons arsenal, which is not acknowledged, but which is widely known and thoroughly destabilizing in the region, you have the United States continuing to give more than $3.1 billion in military aid every year, sending weapons. That's destabilizing the whole situation. Now, you can't compare that to the kind of primitive rockets that Hamas has managed to build, which luckily have killed so few people inside Israel, because they don't work very well. It's not surprising, and we're grateful for that. And those are certainly illegal under international law as well. But that's not where the weapons are coming from. That's not where people are dying as a result. That's not where the civilians are being killed. Civilians are being killed by Israeli airstrikes with great precision, as we've been hearing. This was not an accident that they attacked the school. They said, well, there were shots fired from somewhere near there. That doesn't make it legal. That doesn't make it okay. International law prohibits the targeting of civilian entities overall.
Israel says it doesn't target UN sites.
But they also say that they are capable of pinprick accuracy. They can't have it both ways. Either they're lying about how accurate they are, or they're lying about targeting, one or the other.
All right, Phyllis Bennis, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much.